survey as well. And then you can also reach out to us in the email. So if Nick, you want to go ahead and share that email address for everybody as well. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone, once again, please submit all of your questions or comments in the chat. At the end of the presentation, Nick, he will fire off any of the questions over to Daniel and allow Daniel the chance to respond. Okay, I think we are good. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera. Everybody else, go ahead and mute yourself. And I'm going to pass it over to Daniel. Take it away.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now. I think it's sharing correctly. I guess we'll find out. I'm going to start the presentation. If I could get from the moderator, if I could get confirmation that I am actually presenting correctly.
Yes, you are good to go.
Excellent, let's do it. All right, so this is unusual for me. I've never presented live to video, so it's kind of weird looking just directly at you on my slide, so please bear with me. This is Once Upon a Time in Next.js by Daniel Greenfeld, that's me. And the things I'm going to cover in this talk is why I got started with Next.js, the story, the inception, the public things I can share with you that I built with Next.js. I think Next.js is awesome, and it doesn't replace React. It builds upon it, and it provides incredible guardrails that allows junior developers and more senior developers. I'm going to finish it off with a quick live coding of adding a new feature to one of my sites. So let's take a step back in time. This is a flashback. I've been coding for a while, and this is not, for the record, this is not React. This is a sample of jQuery code. This is how we used to do things. I am really good with jQuery. In fact, I still have a soft spot for it. I know the world's moved on, but in 2015, it was the thing for me. And then I heard about React, and it looked exciting because Facebook created, and it's Facebook, right? And it had some neat ideas. And the stuff that really appealed to me about it, besides Facebook creating it, whenever you built a complex jQuery app, at first it was pretty nice, and then it got hard to maintain. It was really hard to structure things out because you're often mixing server-side code with client-side code. It was just, and also just the way there's no elegant way to compose functions. Yes, there are ways to do it. It's not elegant the way that modern single-page apps work. Another thing that really appealed to me about React, and we take this for granted now, is that it meant that I was certain my code would work. My front-end code would work everywhere. So that was really exciting. And that was Babel, which is part of what powered the SPA revolution. And of course, it was bright and shiny. I mean, as developers, we're like birds. We get attracted to the bright and shiny things. But there were some issues with React in 2015. If you're new to React, you may not know about some of the weird licensing stuff that it used to have. It used to be that if you read the license one way, and there were some attorneys I knew who would talk about it, Facebook arguably owned your front-end code. So that made people really uncomfortable, including a lot of the people I had at clients at the time. The tutorials and documentation were really not there yet. There's a lot of assumptions of the reader that, it was back in the day, so things have changed since then. To get things done often took more configuration than in jQuery. Like you had to write a lot of classes and stuff like that. It just seemed like a lot of work. And of course, this is before promises and a way to in async were mature. So, it was the typical Node.js problem of the time where you would have like these huge nested callbacks that were maintenance challenge in their own right. So I decided at the time to keep going with jQuery, which is probably not what you're thinking was going to happen. But then flash forward to 2018, And jQuery was just becoming an issue. I was dealing with more and more complexity in front-end apps. And one in particular really drove me bonkers. Yes, with modern JavaScript, you don't need jQuery as much. And so I saw people having a lot more fun with the front end than what I was doing. And so and also with jQuery, I was getting bored with it. I mean, I'd been doing it at that point in 2018 for like 8-9 years. So I was pretty bored with it. I glanced at React, but I still had negative feelings from 2015. I try not to hold grudges, but I was holding one against React. So the first thing I did to resolve this is I learned modern JavaScript. And I'm not going to just read everything through, but some of this stuff did really excite me. The whole thing with promises and assay and can await really was the thing that made modern JavaScript really attractive to me. That we got past the callback, the deep levels of nested callbacks. And I decided it was time to learn a modern framework. And that's what I wanted to Vue. Yeah, I know I'm going to get to Next. Trust me, I'm going to get there. It's not going to take that long. So with, at the time, at 2018, there were some real distinct advantages that Vue had over React. One was the licensing was in much better shape. The documentation was so much better. There was no discussion of Redux or whatever state management systems that exist in React. Vue state management is just a lot more straightforward. Simpler doesn't mean simplistic, so you could get very sophisticated. To this day, I still kind of prefer Vue, although I've moved on to React when it comes to state management, but maybe that's a discussion for another day. The point is that for me to get stuff done, it just felt a little bit more elegant at the time. So I coded with, here's 2 years of time. So I got a lot of Vue stuff done, but there were some pain points. If you've ever used Vue and you've used React, you know that library support in Vue.js is not the same as React. There are a lot of, Vue is often a second-class citizens with vendor client libraries. And as much as, there's still there's a lot of elegance about Vue, and it's wonderful to see that there's some crossbreeding happening between Vue and React. Just the library support issue is a challenge. Yes, I know that we're smart engineers. Everyone who's listening to this who's an engineer, I'm guessing, is smart and probably better than me with React and can figure it out. But if I'm trying to move fast and I have to really noodle through to figure out a library to work with Vue when I know I can just plug in React and be more productive, that adds up over time. Once or twice is not a big deal, but when it happens again and again and again over time, it becomes a cost. And a few other things. I became a dad a couple of years ago, so that was nice. Anyway, oops, hold on. So then in November of last year, I got hired by Octopus Energy. And Octopus Energy at the time had a Python backend and a Bootstrap and jQuery front end. And I didn't expect to do much JavaScript. I thought my JavaScript days were going to be long behind me. And I don't know what just happened to that slide. Oh, I guess I have a blank slide. But anyway, so we're going to move forward to May of this year. And for Octopus, we needed a customer-facing portal super fast in a matter of weeks. And the mandate was from on high was we have to use Next.js. And here's the problem. The problem was I'm the manager of the team. I do some code, but everyone on the team, especially anyone who had front-end experience, was already tasked out. We're racing to launch, do a major launch in the US. So no one else had time. That meant I had to do it. And I didn't know Next. I didn't know React. And I'm already busy and I have less than 2 weeks to get done. And this is a customer-facing portal with Lord knows how many users. So this is what I was facing in May. And so the decision, or I guess it was a requirement, I didn't have any other choice, was learn Next.js fast and just do it. And so I learned it over a weekend. What I did is I took the official tutorial for Next.js, which has you build a blog. And then I converted my blog to and extended it way past what the tutorial provides. And I added some extra features just so I could learn the React domain a bit better. Also, my blog needed. And one of the things I learned is compared to 2015 and 2021, React is awesome. It is so much fun. It is such a different thing. And every one of my complaints about React is gone. The license has been fixed. The docs and the tutorials are spot on. With thanks to hooks, a lot of the configuration that I felt I was having to do is gone. Either that or it's just better explained. And of course, modern JavaScript means that we don't have to dive into like layers of nested callbacks. And there certainly were some advantages. The hooks allowed me to like use sort of better patterns than what I was using with Vue. Here's a bit of confession. I've never really done object-oriented coding in JavaScript. I've done it in other languages, but for me, when I code in JavaScript, I have a very functional style, and hooks allowed me to really embrace that, and that was kind of awesome. That's if I'm understanding what hooks do correctly. Of course, there was the fact that if I need a library, unlike with Vue, oh my God, it's so much easier. Oh my goodness. If you are coming from Vue to React, this is something if you've done that, you will understand what I'm talking about. And of course, it was bright and shiny. It's something new. And of course, Next.js is epic. There are some features of it that make me joyous when I work with it. And one of the things I really like, I apologize if my code example isn't super clear for this, is the routing is so easy. Basically, you have a directory in your project called pages, and anything in there that's a JS or JSX or TS or TSX file is routed to as a component in your application. And you can even call AWS Lambda functions by just putting JavaScript functions inside pages as API. And what's great is both Netlify and Vercel honor this agreement with pages/API, that it's super easy Lambda deployment for backend code. And I know that Netlify and Firebase have a functions feature, but the fact that I can move this app between Vercel, I can move apps between Vercel and Netlify, depending on which features I want to use for a platform. This convention is really nice. Conventions are important. The built-in image and font and script optimization is really, really nice. I didn't have time to figure it out, and I needed to have it, and Next.js just configured it for me. And unlike Create React app, it comes with server-side rendering out of the box. That is super easy to work with. And just so you understand what server-side rendering is, that's where you render out the HTML of the page on a server rather than have it render in the user's browser. So you just get a bit faster performance. And for SEO, if I'm not mistaken, that just means you get higher ranked, which if you're doing anything with e-commerce is important. If you need to figure something out with Next.js, there are probably about 100 or 200 sample starter projects of everything from Stripe integration to working with PayPal. I know I'm going down the e-commerce route, to working with various authentication platforms such as Auth0 or Okta and other things. So there's probably around 200. The design of the library, the components are really intuitive. If I need to import the image component, it's import image from next/image. So it's intuitive, and I like that. The documentation is really solid. And of course, I mentioned easy deployments on Vercel and Netlify. And I just found out right before this talk that there's several other platforms that I should have mentioned. So I'm going to try, after this talk is done, I'll find out who else makes Next.js deployments really easy. And then if you want to see something I've done, this is my personal site, and you can go to daniel.feldroy.com, and you can see this is a site that I built in Next. I transferred over my old site content, because my site was more than just a blog, and it's something I rolled out. And again, I took it off the blog and I enhanced it. It's not the only thing I've done. So what this has done is it's given me I've drawn some conclusions. And what I like about Next.js is it provides utilities and controls for React projects. I know that Create React app is a thing, but I've never been too drawn to it, even though I've heard about it, because having built and maintained template projects like that, the challenge is what happens when you move past the core functionality and you want to update things. How do you improve that? How do you build off the base? So Next is a framework, whereas Create React app is a template. And so I don't know, maybe I'm not explaining myself well, but the conventions that it provides and the tools are really handy. Another thing is, well, I've done JavaScript for a really long time. I am new to React and I make mistakes. I don't understand certain aspects of it. And what's great is the guardrails that Next provides and the guidelines allows me to not screw up that poorly or that much. And for the senior front-end people that we have now at my company who have taken over the project I built, which I'm about to share, they're not like wanting to strangle me because I screwed things up so much, because Next.js prevented me from, just by me following the conventions, it prevented me from digging too much of a deep hole. So I think that adds a lot of value. But in summary, combined, the tools are great to work with. And this is for someone who, if you asked me to do React a year ago, I would have said, no way. And now I'm totally sold. So I think it's a pretty awesome development. And if you want to see what I built, if you go to my.octopusenergy.com, you can take a look at what I built. That's not where enrollment is. But basically, the real quick of it is, for the moment, we're selling renewable electricity in the ERCOT region of Texas. And we're hoping to expand beyond that to other states, and even license our technology to our competitors. That's our global plan. But this is the portal for customers to go in, check their bills, and pay their bills. So it's pretty important. We do, if you go to that site, we are improving it. We're working on it. We're expanding our front end team. We're going to be opening up more positions really soon in the Houston area. So if you're looking for work, anyway, sorry, didn't mean to go too far down that road yet. There is technical debt that I left because, again, I was a React newbie, but it's, from what I've been told, and maybe they're just being nice to me, it's not that bad. And so I'm really pleased about that. We're adding more features, including a better enrollment, and we support English and Spanish, and we hope to have Vietnamese and possibly other languages coming soon. And, so awesome stuff. Those are some of the features that we're adding. So now that I've explained what happened in May, I'm going to tell you what happened yesterday, because this is like some coding that I was doing with Next.js. My family, or my wife's family, runs one of their things that they do is they run a nonprofit called Margarita Humanitarian Foundation, and they needed a donation page. And so I put together helpafamily.margaritahumanitarian.org. And I did this in maybe a total of 3 or 4 hours. And it uses Stripe on the back end, and it works. And it is actually an open source project. Oops. an open source project. If I click on this, I think it'll take me there to the repo. Yeah, if you ever want to help out with with the open source project, helping a nonprofit that helps people, once I share the slides, you can go to this link because there are certainly improvements from the work I put together. I did follow good security practices though, so I have been around for a while. And let me see if I can blow this up again. Okay, but what was great for Next.js with Margarita Humanitarian's donation page, which is Help a Family, is one, the easy routing, which I've described. The fact that it's allowed me to keep our code organized and minimal, which means that if you come in and want to help out, it's going to be really clear where code contributions are. So if you do want to help out and improve your skills and portfolio, it's open source project. And anyway, so today, what am I going to be doing today? So I mentioned this is my site that I've been working on and growing over time. And real quick about it, one of the things I mentioned that's nice about Next.js is the server-side rendering, that it makes it really easy to do. This is something that I know that Create React app can't do, but most, I know Gatsby does. But you basically define things like get static props, and I think there's another function that you define, and that guarantees that it's rendered on the server side. And then, you can see I render the content. And this is the actual view that's being called. Excuse me. Sorry, I had to drink. And again, this is the routing of the project. And I even have this random function here where I was like figuring out how to make API calls using Next.js. So yeah, I think I've gone over this several times. I'm gonna end up repeating what I've said before, but again, the server-side rendering means for loading and SEO, my site moves really fast. The code is organized and minimal, and I get all the advantages of having a backend server on a platform like Vercel, which is where I host it. And I even wrote out this, which is the API call. And this is actually hitting the back end. If I refresh, you can see that I'm getting a different number. And the way that is called is that is hitting, I think it is going to API/random. And this is, this is calling the backend function. And each time I refresh the page, it calls the API again. And if I go to the repo, if you are familiar with, I think Express works this way. I go to pages and API, you can see that this is a pretty straightforward demonstration of, handling a request, a request object and a response object with Node.js. So, and this is hosted by Vercel, and this is actually turned into an AWS Lambda. I didn't have to do any of the deployment involved. It just does it for me, and I love that kind of stuff. Okay, so where are we? Yeah, you can see this is actually how I call it in the code. If you go to the repo where I host this, you can see this is what I created my first day of using React and Next. So pretty awesome. Don't believe I've touched it since then. Okay, and then, oh yeah, I explained this and showed this already. This is just me showing you where I have the server-side function, the Lambda function. And so yeah, so that's my quick tour of like all the features that I love about Next.js and why I really am enjoying React. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to do something with Next.js. And this is going to be like really beginner friendly since I'm still beginner with this particular tool set. So, okay, so I'm going to, let's pull up VS Code. Okay, so I'm going to pull up VS Code, and Okay, so the thing is when I go to my personal site, let's pull up my browser. If I go to my personal site, I get a lot of people. I don't know why my personal site is not showing up. Okay, I get a lot of people saying, "Hey, Daniel," or Danny, as I'm often called, "I'm looking for work. Can you help me?" And I don't have time to like farm through all this. So I've been thinking about like listing just having a page on my site in addition to my about and the books that I've written. I wanted to have a jobs thing, of vetted jobs. So that way people ask, "Hey, I'm looking for work. Can you help me out?" I can list that. And this way I can list the companies and people I know who I feel I can trust to refer people to. And I seem to have, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna start up next. So this is my VS Code. And so first thing I need to do is I'm gonna create a new page. And I'm just gonna be really lazy and copy my about page to a page called jobs.js. You're probably wondering why I don't call this JSX, and that's just habit, because I've only done it with .jss, or JS, but these are JSX pages. Okay, so I'm just going to change the name of the function to say jobs. I don't think that really means anything. So if someone else here knows more about React can probably answer that. Jobs. I can't type. And I'm going to blow this up just so all of you can see this a bit better. And then I'm going to change this to say jobs and say, and let's do jobs that I have vetted. And I'm not sure, I guess I can get rid of this because this isn't books. And then right here, this links to my social media. I'm going to change this to, I will link to, let's see, Octopus Energy, because I work there and I think it's awesome. And then if one of the organizers of this event, if you are working a job looking for people, let me know, and I will link to it from my site. And then let's start up. So just okay. And so I'm gonna start it up. I already have all my dependencies installed. I didn't want to make everybody wait while I challenge my network. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here, and if I pull up my local host, okay, and if I go to my local and I pull up jobs, then so I have jobs that I have vetted. I'll probably I'll write this out a little bit nicer when I'm not having people look over my shoulder when I code, but the important thing is that, again, if I can, it's not switching over quickly. But the important thing is that I didn't have to do any routing. I just copied a file over, and it looks pretty decent. I guess I do need to have a link to, because this, right now we can't find it. So I'm going to go to my layout component. And that is here. And I'm going to now, one of the things you'll notice is that this is a primitive URL routing system that as far as I know, Next doesn't have named URL routes. It'd be good if it did, and I think there actually is a feature that people have created that as like third-party packages. I'm just not familiar with it at this time. I think I need to put another space item there. So let's get that in place, and let's go back to our. Okay, so now it's there. It's, as we know, it's Vue.js, so it just kind of shows up automatically. What I'm going to do is move this, just changing the flow of this a little bit so we can see changes as they occur a little bit better. Oops. So, oops, and hold on, that was the wrong thing. Okay, so if I click here on jobs, it takes me there, and I can go to the home page, and jobs are there. Let me just put in the link to the Houston location for work real quick. And then again, for one of you event organizers, if you have a job rack you want me to link to, I'll do that for you, because I'm sure that you work for great companies. And okay, so now if I click on this, it'll take me to the jobs page. So I think that's good for now. And what I'll do now is let's deploy it. As I mentioned, this is deployed on Vercel. So git add pages, jobs, git commit, add a jobs page, git push version main. And so now this is pushing up to GitHub. And if you're not familiar with Vercel, it is this it and Netlify, and there's, I think, some other smaller competitors have this awesome feature where, or this awesome capability to deploy primarily static sites very quickly. And if you're doing open source or not super traffic heavy things, you can get away with it for free. And then, and of course they have commercial offerings. So at work, we use both Netlify and Vercel, and it is still deploying. I think that's what this is saying. So yeah, so Vercel is deploying. Here, I'll load that up. So if you're following on, and let's see if we can pull up the details. Okay, so this is Vercel building. It has built out the site, and it looks like it is, usually it does this a lot faster. I think it's done. Okay, so yeah, so I now have a jobs page. So with a to-do, because neither Nick or Fabian or Tracy have given me yet what link they want me to put there. But that, again, yeah, this was a super simple thing. I didn't put any complex logic. What I'd love to do maybe at some point is go from a purely static site to something where I should put a period here. Employers and jobs that I vetted and jobs that I have vetted. What I think would be awesome is to maybe use Firebase as a backend and then let people submit things, and then I go investigate it, kind of like, I guess, a real job board. Not that I want to charge money for it, but again, it's just, I do get requests from people saying, hey, I'm looking for work. Can you recommend something? It'd be nice to help people out in a more organized way than what I currently do, which is kind of, just when I check my DMs in various social media. So, so yeah, that's my quick and easy live coding. So let's go back to the presentation. And okay, so all right, so a little bit about me before I go and open the floor to questions. I am married to an incredible software engineer named Audrey Roy Greenfeld. She went to MIT. She's brilliant. I've got a little girl. She's not quite 3 yet. I have over 24 years of professional experience. I code in Python, JavaScript primarily. I am the head of engineering at Octopus Energy USA, which is based in Houston, Texas. I have done a lot of open source in the past. I'm not doing too much right now, but I'd love to get back into it at some point. And I write articles and books, and none about JavaScript yet, but I'd like to. And you can find me in these places on social media. So that's me. And oh, and Well, since you're here, we now have I have a vetted jobs page on my personal site. So you can go there for jobs that I think would be awesome to work at. If you come work at Octopus, it means you come and work with me, which might be a lot of fun. So yeah, that's it. That's my talk. Just that's my new page and that's my talk. So any questions?
Daniel, you did an awesome job. Thank you so much. And just as he had just said, I am going to pass this over to Nick. Nick, are there any questions in the chat?
Yes, we got a couple of questions in the chat. Just want to remind all the viewers, if you have any questions about the presentation, go ahead and drop that in our YouTube chat, and we'll definitely try to get to those and answer them. So Daniel, one of the first questions we have is from Cody. Did you ever play around with Next.js Vue's version of Next.js?
You mean Next.js?
Yes.
Yeah, I tried it. Oh my goodness, it was 2018 or 2019, and it wasn't wherever it is now. It was still, I think, really early in the process, so it wasn't a flattering experience. And I remember looking at it and thinking, maybe it wasn't that long ago, but it was long enough ago that it was still extremely new. And I remember thinking, wow, this shows promise, but I couldn't use it at the time. But I know it's come a long way.
And we have another question from Dean. Did you run into any issues with third-party packages not working with Next.js due to them trying to access the document.window DOM element?
I'm trying to think if we have. It sounds like a really unfamiliar error, but I'd love to, if he's got issue to share, I would love to see what he's experienced, because if there's a problem, you know, I don't want to get hurt by it. And also it'd be nice to just figure it out together.
And we have a question from Sebastian. I guess it's pertaining to the job post. They just asked the question to see if it was remote.
It is, at the moment, we're all working remotely. We're still in the process of setting up the office, but we will, once the office comes live, so we're all going to slowly start heading towards Houston. As I mentioned, I'll be moving there in the next few months. So if you're interested, then, you know, by all means apply. I will say that we are limited to only hiring in the USA for that location, that all Houston jobs, if you cannot legally work in the USA, my apologies, but I can't assist you. And we don't have we're not some giant like petroleum corporation with billions of dollars in the bank. We're a little shop getting off the ground, so we can't handle immigration or visas.
And then, yeah, it looks like we have a question from our very own Fabian. Should I keep my Next.js focused on? Oh, did you want to ask?
Actually, no. I actually have a follow-up question after.
Okay,
So
yeah.
You can take this one.
Okay, for sure. Should I keep my Next.js focused on front end and have separate code base for my API?
I think it really depends on the project. For us at Octopus, our backend handles the retail energy market in the ERCOT region, and that means that it's complex, and it is a huge Python-powered project with probably a few 100,000 lines of code. So for that, putting that into like Lambda functions probably isn't going to work. But for a lot of less enterprisey apps, I think it's worth trying out. It really depends on the scope of your application, what you're trying to build. But so real quick about me, I love working in serverless environments like this. So if it's not something like this where I anticipate like a gigantic code base, then I will try to put things into Next.js. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's like the typical lawyer answer of it depends. And
Yeah,
so,
it depends.
yeah,
Okay, so let me restate. Every consulting project I have worked on before I came onto Octopus, and this included some pretty big stuff, we had moved over to a serverless environment. We had found that it was easier for us to maintain stuff in mono repos, having done a lot of microservices. The problem with microservices, if you've ever done them a lot, is you often just are creating a distributed monolith. So for me, if it were up to me, unless it's something gigantic scale like our backend, which is called Kraken, it's going to be inside of the Next.js project if it's a purely JavaScript project.
And I did have another question, but it looks like Dean followed up with his other questions. I don't know if you wanted to share that, Nick.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Dean has another question. I've heard that it's a very common thing for Next.js to run into with older React models.
With older React, I'm not trying to understand.
Modules.
Yeah, my bad. Modules.
So
I can reread that again if you want me to.
Yeah, if you could, just so.
Gotcha. I've heard that it's a very common thing for Next.js to run into, or I guess like work with older React modules.
Okay, so I think by modules, does he mean libraries?
Yeah, I believe so. And this is the one about like the like third-party packages trying to access the DOM.
Ah, okay.
And so that's good that he mentioned that, because I mean, obviously, I'm just gonna start up the next project.
No, that's a really good issue. I mean, you run into this with any programming language or framework where sometimes you have a dependency on something that isn't being updated, and and the maintainers, maybe they're busy like me, they've had a baby, and so they can't give it the attention that they need. And it's, in my experience, what I've typically done is I either start making contributions to that project, or I look for alternatives, or ask if the maintainer won't accept pull requests, and maybe do what's called a friendly fork and make the updates and promise that you'll, when they're able to pick it up, you're happy to merge your project into theirs. But yeah, that's a tricky one, and it's not just a Next specific one. And I'm guessing that if you are doing things with modern React and trying to hit with older modules, you're going to have the same problem.
So I did have one my follow-up question, and this I know is just going to take trial, or I'm just going to have to get into Next and learn for myself. But if you can speak to it, if not, perfectly fine. It's specifically around like front-end like libraries like Redux, right? Or your front-end data storage, where because you have whenever you would have a client, SPA, just to create React app, you just store everything there. But now that it's going to be server-side rendered, it doesn't muddy the water. If anything, it's actually supposed to clear things up to where it's like, okay, well, you can prepare the data before you even put into your HTML. You can prepare it in the back end. But I'm just curious to know, or maybe you've seen where it's like, as front end developers, the next project I would have to like rethink or relearn how my data layer is on the application. But I don't know if you can speak to it, like if you've experienced anything, or maybe you've seen it.
Sure. So if I'm not mistaken, you're talking about if you have a complex front-end data model, like you're doing lots of operations in the client, how do you balance that with moving that more to the back end, especially since it's easy to create these handy little API functions? You're basically given, it's really easy to build out a REST API. So how do you balance that? And I think it depends kind of on what you're doing. If you're building something with a lot of like spreadsheet kind of capabilities, where you're having, if you change one thing in a form and something over here changes, and you want to give a super responsive feel for the user, then of course you want to keep the data as much in the browser as you want. And also, if you're doing, the other challenges is if you're doing a lot of operations like heavy math or file processing, it can be cheaper and faster to do it in the browser. Like if you're rendering out Word documents, my little dark secret is I love to do that in the browser. Like when I pay for the server time or the AWS Lambda function time, if people's browsers do it fast enough. And then you're just sending, you might render it as, like you might get the JSON content from the server, but then you render that out as the Word XML that renders out a Word document. So I think where I'm coming to this is it's kind of on a case by case basis. In terms of what we're doing for our portal right now is we have a super simple data model where, depending on which view that you're looking at, we're just grabbing the data right then. And there's a really good reason for that, and that's that we want to take, because in Texas you have smart meters, and I think we can get reads every 5 minutes. So it'd be awesome if people were like checking their phone or on their computer what their energy usage was and what their bill is, especially in an energy spike time, like a heat wave or a winter storm, and see, oh, maybe I should turn off the AC or turn off the heat and grab blankets. So that said, during the winter storm, we just ate the cost of our customers, which was kind of tricky financially, but, and that's what we do again. But the point is we want to have that responsiveness. So because of that, for now, at least, we're just per view, we just grab the data. But that is our approach. It may not fit your approach or what your requirement is. And also, to be honest, because I'm so React newbie, I don't know how Redux works.
No worry, with GraphQL, I think I saw it somewhere in the documentation that Next does also supports GraphQL. I wouldn't. I mean, still, obviously, if you find yourself in the front end, to look into Redux, you need a data store, but with tools such as like React Query, which I saw in your code base thing, it's SWR, what I saw.
Yeah, that's a Vercel library.
Yeah, so like libraries like that, like they make your server data or your server state and your actual client state. It helps with that separation, and so that's like as a front end community, that's what we're learning right now. Like the hard way, it's like, okay, like back end data should be over here, front end over there. But thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd love to do, especially in the days to come, either in person or online, is maybe do some hackathons or stuff like that, where we dive in and figure out this stuff and figure out maybe some good patterns for it. I don't know what we build. Well, I know for me, I'd be working on like some projects I have, but I'd love to, because you clearly have a lot more experience with React. I think everybody else in this discussion does. I'm willing to do grunt work for the chance to sit next to you and learn.
And it looks like those are all the questions we have on YouTube right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back to you, Tracy.
All right. Thank you, Nick. And once again, thank you, Daniel. You did an amazing job. We'll definitely get with you on sharing all the links that you provided to make sure, after this recording, that people still have access to those. But yes, thank you, audience, again for attending. And we will have this video up shortly. Nick, you'll probably have to keep me updated on that, and everyone updated as far as like when that video will be available. But this will be available after the live event for everybody to rewatch. Thank you again, and see you guys next time.